A third. We have one more guest speaker. Just entered the room. Terry McWilliams. He's kind of an Indiana legend. No, y'all will make us take your over bonus. He's had so many accomplishments. I've only met Larry a couple times. I'm really good friends with his grandson, Brody. And my ultimate goal is to have them both here. Brody is.
He's probably still celebrating.
Yeah, he's celebrating DC and from DC's win yesterday.
Yeah, him and, I don't know, are they even awake yet?
Yeah, but he texted me a few minutes
Oh,
ago.
okay.
So, Terry McWilliams, everyone, he's going to give us this.
Can you hear me without the mic all right back there?
I can. Yeah.
Dave, can you hear me all right? Yeah. I just assume don't do it because I'm
Hands on.
Some of you guys I know, some of you I don't. Some I may know and may not remember. But, that's kind of part of getting old age, dementia, whatever. To start off with, what Wayne just was talking about, I actually personally know one person and had met the other man, and he beat me out $11,000 by 1 ounce. That'd be Kevin. Them's the only two people I really know that's making money doing this. The rest of us just having a good time. Jacob and Kevin Van Dam, they definitely make some money in this game. Wow. Kevin beat me by 1 ounce at the Bassmaster Classic. That was 15 fish. That was 3 days worth of fish. And I just realized the other day, I pulled in my two biggest fish out, held them out, and walked out there and let them drip for 5 minutes and put them back in the bag.
They probably lost that.
You haven't seen that on my Facebook for a while. I finally took it off and I realized that little picture cost me $11,000. This thing was just wetter. They weren't bigger, they were wetter. You know,
Weigh him first. Weigh him first.
Yeah. I was watching, I guess, the Billy at Okeechobee the other day, and it may have been even Billy, but one of the guys took one of their fish out, and before they put it back in the thing, they dipped it before they put it back in. And the tournament guy says, "I've seen that, but it's different." I mean, I say especially over a 3-day period. Yeah. Anyway, that was 3 years. I don't have a put-together speech. I'm not a professional speaker. You all know that if you've heard me speak before. And really, all I can speak about is what I know, and what I know is the stupid tooth. And I think all of you have heard that. Probably some of you may be even fishing. So, what I'd like to do is anybody got any questions? And I'll try to, whoever, and I don't know how long you want me to talk, but if I get rambling too long, shut me off. The other part of it, and I talked to the young man back there, Sammy, the other thing I do is I may get to rambling off somewhere, trying to get to a point and get off on a tangent. If I'm trying to make a point about something, I get off on a tangent. I told him to, shake his hand or holler at me or give me back. So, is that fine with you guys? Or is that
Absolutely.
Something I've never heard, Terry, and you've spoke several times. What gave you the idea of the stupid tube?
So evidently you haven't heard me speak.
Well, I'm throwing it. And I just, what gave you the idea to make the design so it reacts the way it does?
In the year 2000, I made the Indiana State team. And at that time it was on Prairie du Chien, Iowa, or Wisconsin, which is on Mississippi River. So I think Iowa was hosting it, but we took off in Wisconsin because they had a better boat ramp. Anyway, I was on Mississippi River, and Kenny Swint and his club had been up there the year before, and they caught some fish off the riverboat. And he said every time the riverboat left, you could go in behind there, because it was stirring stuff up, and you could catch 2 or 3 keepers. Okay, it's something to look at, and I'm not doing it. So we were in practice, and I was practicing that riverboat, and they was having a little club tournament, and 2 guys was fishing the spot on the other side of the river. And after they left, I went over and looked at it, and I seen them catch several fish off, and they was throwing crankbaits. And when I went over and looked at it, what it was an eddy, and I like fishing current. I fished White River my whole life. But it was current, but what it was doing, it was flowing through these old barge tie-ups, and on the Mississippi River, a lot of them was just old telephone poles. So it was like 4 or 5 telephone poles, and the current ran through there, dumped into a deep hole. And if you could get a bait to come through them logs and fall in that hole, it was automatic. It was boom, boom, boom. And I sat there and watched them catch a bunch of fish. They left, I went over and threw my tube in there, and I caught a couple, hung my tube up, and the only way you could get in there and get your tube back was go through the hole. Well, if you went through the hole, you spooked the fish out. It was only about 5 or 6 foot deep. So if you went through the hole, you spooked the fish out. Well, anyway, we had 3 days of practice, and on the state teams, at the end of the day, you have a meeting, you know, because in the team stuff, for the federation, the money's in the team event, and the individual qualifies to go on. So I went back to meeting that night, and ISG, I don't even know if they're in business anymore, it's a plastic company. ISG give us all like a 10 or 20 pack of green bunking tubes, and they give us 3 jig heads. Well, the jig heads they give us were just round bend, straight shank hooks, and they were 3/16 ounce. So the only way I knew from fishing some up on Lake Erie to rig a tube was just shove the head in there, exposed hook. Works great. The other way is Texas rig. And so anyway, I went back to that club meeting. I said, guys, they're eating that green bunking tube out on the river. I said, smallmouth and largemouth whoa. I said, if you guys aren't going to throw it, I'll buy your tubes off you and I'll buy your jig head. Because what I knew was going to happen in the tournament, I was going to get hung up in them logs, and the only way to do it is to break them off. So anyway, 2 other guys said, I want to throw that. I'm catching one blue pink-tailed worm or something. You can have mine. So anyway, 2 or 3 guys give me their packs of tubes and give me their jig heads. Well, I walked out of there. I said, this was in 2000. I walked out of the meeting, and a kid by the name of Chris Schultz. Some of you guys may know him. He's from Monticello, Indiana, an old Tippecanoe River fisherman. Came up to me and said, how do you figure rigging your tube? I said, I only know 2 ways. Either Texas rig or shoving the head in. I said, it seems to hang up better and come through the logs better with the jig head. He said, let me show you a little trick. So he showed me how to rig it. Right there, he went down my room, showed me how to rig it. He went back, so I went in the room, tied my jig head on. Just like you always do, tie your hook on first, right? Tied my jig head on, grabbed me a tube and tried rigging it. Crap, I couldn't figure out how to rig it. So I cut the jig head off, went back down to his room. I said, how you rig this thing? I can't rig it. So he showed me again. I said, I knew that's what I done. He said, did you tie the jig on first? I said, well, yeah. No, he said, it won't work if you do that. So that's how I learned to rig. I ended up qualifying top guy from Indiana in that tournament. I ended up gluing, I didn't have a whole lot of tube. I ended up super gluing the tubes back together because it was pulling through. So I ended up gluing, before the tournament was over, I ended up gluing the heads back on tubes. I mean, I had tubes in the floor, picking them back up and trying to find the best one that would have pulled through and gluing them back onto the head. But anyway, I ended up qualifying number 1. So I made it to the national championship in 2000. I beat Chris Schultz, which the guy that showed me how to rig it, by 2 pounds. He finished second. So I've thanked him a few times since then. He's the one who showed me how to rig that. That was in 2000. In 2001, I did a seminar at Ted's Aquamarine. I don't know if anybody was there, but I talked about a stupid tube. All right. In 2002, I did a seminar at Ted's. I talked about the stupid tube. In 2003, because I'm not a great speaker, but I talked about that for 5 years. Most people, other than Matt McCoy, some of you guys probably heard of Matt McCoy, he's also made the Bassmaster Classic with a stupid tube. Calvin Davis was finished 3rd in All-American on the Ohio River before 2006 on a stupid tube. But most people didn't realize that that's, just like most fishermen, they figure, well, you're lying about it. In 2006, I went to the national championship, qualified for Bassmaster Classic, and it showed up during the boat show, and I guess a lot of people from Indiana was watching online at the boat show, me catching them on green pumpkin stupid tube, finishing fourth in Bassmaster Classic. I don't know how many people ever said, well, you was telling the tree planter Ted, wasn't you? Yeah. So what somebody talked about a few minutes ago, don't have a problem telling somebody your techniques or how to do things. I was taught at a young age that it's hard to help someone else without helping yourself. And I've kind of tried to live by that. I mean, no, you don't have to tell them everything. You don't have to give them the weight points exactly. You don't have to tell them that, you know, most of the time the fish are set up on this side of the stump or that side of the stump. But, you know, Matt McCoy's been on me since 2006 for telling everybody about the tube. But does that answer your question of how it came about? That's how the tube.
Yeah.
I did not come up with it. There's some river rats up there that probably are mad at me too because it's
global.
And I just realized yesterday, 2007 is the ones at the Classic. That's what, 13 years ago, 14 years ago. 14 years ago, time flies. But I don't know how many times I've been at the seniors tournaments and other tournaments where somebody's kicking my butt. So, you ain't gonna believe what I caught him on Friday.
Go ahead.
Hey Terry, it's funny you leave the state of Indiana and you tell them, they ask you, hey, what are you doing to catch fish? And you say, well, I caught it on a tube. Well, how do you rig that? Well, I rig it stupid tube. And they just look at you. What? In Indiana, everybody knows it. If you go to Kentucky, they probably know it up north. But if you go to Kentucky or anywhere south, they're like, what is that? Have you noticed that?
Oh yeah, definitely. So I mean, it's getting around now.
Yeah.
Since they started doing the commercials and Secret Lures started. Another guy bought Secret Lures. Nathan Gray owned it. Nathan was just trying to. It was his second business, and he was just kind of making his fishing money, like he was talking about a while ago. His fishing account, so he really didn't promote it. This new guy's really promoted. It's I've seen some of the TV commercials he's done, but I mean, they're selling all over the place right now.
Funny how they look at you. What? Stupid tube. And then I have to pull out a head, pull out a tube, and then show them how to rig it.
Brody called me 2 or 3 days ago. The first day of the tournament at Eufaula, I don't know if you guys know, I think it's Mike Foster. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Mike's fishing an ABA tournament down
Yeah.
there.
He's in the other tournament going on.
Yeah, well, that tournament was
Yeah.
going on. Well, the 2 practice days before that, he was down there practicing, and he showed up at the ramp where they was going out of. It was later in the afternoon, and all the camera guys was there. And he was talking to the camera guys, and hey, I'm from Indiana. He said, man, I've been catching them out there on a stupid tube. And I guess 2 or 3 of them, which knows Brody, started laughing. So when Brody got there later, they come and told Brody, he said, there's some guy down there from Indiana. Said he's catching them on a stupid tube. So well, there is a few people that do know about it. Any other questions?
What's your weight? I mean, what's your rule
Well,
on
about
weight?
240.
And I'm real.
Hey, I'm working on it, okay? Come on. Fishing question. A little story, I got all kinds of stories. I use probably 80% of the time a 3/16. All right. Since I started fishing some up on the Detroit River and stuff, I've used some quarters. I just talked to my Danny today. He sent me some 5/16 in the HD head. And to explain that, we come up with a new jig head last year. It's called the HD head. It's a 4/0. They make it a 3/16. It's a 3/16 4/0, but it's not the regular 3/16 4/0. What I use most of the time in a 3.72 is the 3/16, either a 3/0 or a 4/0 hook. And it actually makes a difference. I try to use the 4/0 a lot. I used up until about 2 years ago. Everything I threw was on a 3/16 with a 3/0 hook. I just kind of got into throwing a 4/0 hook a little bit lately. Last year. You get a better hookup with 4/0. But this tube actually works better. A 3.5 or 4-inch tube works better with a 3/0 hook. If I'm in a real tough situation and I'm getting bite, not getting bit, I grab a 3/16 or an 8 with a 3/0 hook in it. bait, I don't know how to explain it, but the bait works different with that 3-aught hook than that other before. You get better hookup before. Most people didn't even know the year after I fished the Classic, I also went to the All-American. I missed the All-American by less than 2 pounds, and I only weighed 4 fish the last day. And I lost one that weighed about 3.5 on a stupid tube. I used to lose a lot of fish with it. I don't lose near what I used to with it. But it still happens. But you get more bites with it, I believe. So that's I love it. They are selling secret lure stupid tubes here now. They have in the past. Jason kind of come up with his own tube rig or tube company. The secret lures has got a little thinner sidewall than most. Back to the head thing I was trying to explain. I just use a regular 3-aught or 4-aught jig head most of the time, but we come up with the HD head for the big dummy tubes and for the 4-inch tubes. It's more than a 3/16. It's got a 3/16 chunk of lead on the end of it, but that hood is a heavy duty head. For you guys like the land back there sitting like that, you need that HD hook because it's a heavy hook. The regular hooks are real bent out with that muscle hook set. If anybody watch me, you can watch the 2007 Bassmaster Classic. I don't set the hook, I just reel.
Lay into it.
I just lean, I just reel. I do it real fast. Real fast and jerk.
What's that line, rod reel combo?
On a spinning reel, most of the time I'll throw on 10-pound test, 10-pound fluorocarbon, straight fluorocarbon. I know a lot of guys, pros, and everybody else is using braided fluorocarbon. I've played with that. The problem I have with braided fluorocarbon, I love it. I mean, I guided for 13 years on White River, and when you're guiding and using fluorocarbon, it costs you money because it's good for one day with people that don't fish. Because most people don't. They make a cast and here's just another little pointer. Most people make the cast and try to hit right beside that stump. And the very first thing they do is they click the bell. But I've never seen anybody do that. Well, you see what I've done, but I click the bell. Most people do this. They make 3 turns. That's 9 feet. You just throw to the perfect spot where the bass is going to be and drug it 9 feet away from it. Alright? What you do, here's the way I fish it too. First I need to get the knot on. I make the pitch and stop it, swamp. I stop it and I'm already torqued. I'm already feeling the bait right there. So I stopped it with this finger. Also, you can feather it with that finger. I don't use this finger because my sister mashed it off in the corridor when I was 12 years old. I have to use this finger. I keep fighting with that finger.
I think she likes you.
Anyway, one of the best tips I can give right now is this right here. Pitch it, stop. Alright, stop the line, and then click the bell. And usually I don't even click the bell. The first thing I do is get contact, and then I click the bell. Because if you just pitch to the perfect spot, he may have just ate it. And if he's where he wants to be, and there ain't no other fish around, he just eats it. And if you miss that, which is a tick, same thing as a bluegill bite, where you guys say, oh, there's a bluegill, there's a bluegill. Maybe a whole lot better than I am. I've done this since I was 12 years old. I don't fish many team tournaments. I fish mostly draw tournaments. And my guy in the back of the boat, I shouldn't say this, but when he said, oh, I got a bluegill bite, I'd say, boom, his line was right there. I fished down the bank, I turned back around, and I pitched right over where that bluegill bite.
There's that bluegill.
I ain't found nobody yet that can tell the difference between a tick from a bluegill or a tick from a bass. What I do is I make a pitch and I feel for pressure. If there's pressure there, I hold. I don't keep pulling. You see, most people, what they do is they pitch, and either reel or the first movement is like that. Make that jig hop. No, the first feel is feel, not pull. Quit reeling and start feeling. So you pull up and feel. If there's nothing there, then I drag it. And then I'll maybe drag it in, then I'll reel it in. I fish slow real fast. When I'm on something, I'm on it and I try to hold it there. When I'm off of it. See, that's the reason I really don't like fluorocarbon, but the reason I don't like braid fluorocarbon is because fluorocarbon, two or three things. One, fluorocarbon is, wind catches it worse than it does fluorocarbon. It don't sink, so it floats on top, so current catches it. If I just pitch it in, especially up on the Detroit River where you got all kinds of current, if I pitch it in there in that strong current and it catches my line, the other thing I do is when it hits, I lift instead of drop. Because if you drop your line down, the current's going to catch it. I don't want that bait to go in where I lift. That's the other reason I fish a spinning reel. I started fishing a spinning reel because this shoulder was hurting from setting the hook and jerking and, you know, getting old age. So that's the reason I went to spinning reel. But when I went to a spinning reel, I started to find out there's things I can do with a spinning reel they can't do with a bait cast. I mean, it ain't finesse because it's a 7.6 medium heavy with 10-pound test line. I use 12 or 15 if I get by with it. It's hard to get by with it. I do use some 12. I put 15 in it, but 15 is just not manageable with this here.
You gotta cast it out, let it go.
Not for me. Got a twist. Hopefully get them twisted out of gunners in 2 weeks.
There you
Where was that? Anywhere close to that? You guys understand what I was saying there? And I got a lot of that from guiding on the river because, you know, at first I didn't realize what people were doing, but I got to watching them, they weren't getting bit. Well, I just told you to pitch over that rock, but then they're not at that rock. Because what I see is when you make a pitch over there, if you're not right hitting the bass in the head, he's heard that, and he's over here somewhere, and he swims to where it's at, and you done moved 9 feet, it ain't where he thought it went in at. So that's the reason the first thing I do is pull up and wait a minute, hopefully they come and eat it. So. Sir?
At what point do you abandon the tube, or do you ever?
I don't.
You stay with it?
To me, it's not even a seasonal thing. Now, I don't always fish it the same way. I mean, there's a lot of times, I mean, and that's where I like the big dummy. The big dummy is just another tool. To me, I use a big dummy like most of you guys use a swim bait. And this one's Texas rig, because I do still Texas rig some. This is the big dummy, but I fish the big dummy stupid tube rig, and what I do is I use more of a glide bait. So when they're feeding on perch up in St. Clair and north, where they feed on perch, and guys is full of perch, but this here imitates a perch and a bluegill, not Texas rig, but big stupid tube rig. It imitates a bait fish better than a lot of other baits does. But what I do with it is I pitch it out or make a cast with it, and I lift it and let it glide into stuff, especially if there's any stump or any cover. You know, like he's a stump right there. I'll lift it and try to glide it into him and hit that stump and pull off that stump and glide it into something else. But but no, I mean, yeah, I throw crankbait, but again, my shoulders won't let me wind a lot. I crank for about 30 or 40 minutes and I'm shot. I mean, there's times that I throw, you know, I've done good up in Detroit with a DT15, but I can't do it very long. But, you know, sometimes they want something fast and something big in the bottom.
Right.
But I've always got at least one big dummy and at least 2, if not 3 tubes on the deck of my boat. Even if there's, you know, I mean, I fish a jig a lot. I think there's times that bigger fish will eat a jig, but I think they'll always eat a tube. But to say to abandon it, if kind of back are both wearing my bed out on crankbait, I'm gonna abandon it for a while when my shoulders get tired. But then the same thing, I mean, I fish a lot on bait caster, I fish a lot on spinner, but there's things I can do with this that I can't do with that, even with the stupid tube rig. Heavier line,
Right.
I can still skip this other stuff, I can't skip this part, but I can skip that from this here, I can skip it, but I usually gotta pull line to get the fat lash up when I do.
I'd always wondered that because Dayton and Botus are two of the best stupid tube fishermen that I know, and then Matt McCoy and yourself, you're really consistent, and I always wondered if things were tough, if you just stuck with it or ever tried
That's the
something
reason I
different.
use it, because Indiana, most of the time, it's tough.
Yeah, makes sense.
I mean, that's the reason it works good. If anything, that's the reason I didn't win the Bassmaster Classic. I left my fish at 9:30 every day except for the last day, because I'm used to fishing Indiana. I caught a limit. I mean, I led the Bassmaster Classic every day, because as soon as I got there, I caught 5 keeper fish. They were just 5 keeper fish. Well, I did it the first day, and I called like 5 or 6 times, and I thought, I got 3 days, 2 more days, I gotta go find some other fish, and come back here tomorrow and catch me 5 more, because I'm gonna take these 5 away. Well, in Indiana, you can't take 40 fish out of one spot. You leave Indiana, there's places that you can set and catch 40 or 50 or 60 or 70. The last day, I didn't have no reason to leave, but all I needed 5 fish, I'm gonna get the 5 best out of it. About 10 o'clock, the bigger fish started biting. I called probably easily 15 to 23 pound fish that day. So, I mean, I just got beat by 2.5 pounds, 3 pounds or something like that, so. Another 2 days, I just needed to cull one of my 12-inch fish for, at the end of the day, at 2 o'clock, I left, I had an hour and a half to fish. I left because I was culling with a balance beam, and they wouldn't weigh 4 pounds, and they weighed 315, 314, 315, and I put them on a balance beam and throw one back and keep the heavy one, and I'd catch another one and put them on a balance beam, and I was culling like that, and I don't know how many times I've done that. And finally says, hey, they're 4 pound spots, and that's all, that's a big spot. And so I left, and I went and flipped the jig into a river willow, and I caught a 315 largemouth that was just a little bit heavier than one of my spots, so I throw one of my 315 spots and put a 315 and a half largemouth in the box. But, probably, and who knows, I could have stayed there the other 2 days all day and not caught the 3 pound. But on the 3rd day, I don't know what the difference was. I didn't notice the water any faster, any slower, or nothing.
So that spot at Lay Lake, I'm sure it's special in your mind, and you taking high school kids, Brody, and then back there years later. Is that spot still fished the same?
Yeah.
Does it?
Not quite as much because they don't generate anymore. There's still some, and I don't know if they even generate. I don't know if there's any current at all there anymore, other than the river current. But yeah, me and Brody went like 3 years later. 3 years ago when Jacobs just started fishing, he was fishing the leads, and Brody started filming with him. We stopped there on the way down to Lake Martin, and we pulled up there, and there was 2 guys fishing a tournament, and they were fishing it different because they was tied up, and they was fishing downstream to it, but they was catching fish. They kept hiding stuff, and I finally pulled up there and said something to them. They said, "You're the reason we're fishing here." That's fishing a little different, but Brody's took some kids down there, high school team down there. He's went down there to college team.
Yeah.
There's been, the bad part, there's been like 3 other 4th places come from there.
Oh, wow.
Can't seem to win there, but it's, and he's talking about the weight, where I'm sitting now at the Classic, I was on the Motor Guide towing motor, 101 or 108, whatever, 36 bolt. I'm sitting at 80% on the trolling motor to hold still. If I moved up to 100 and pulled, I could get myself up there and get my bait unhooked. But after the Classic, after it aired on TV, a guy from down there called me. told me his name and stuff, and he says, hey, he said, I've lived down there my whole life, because I've fished right there. He said, I've never caught fish that big out there. He said, how big a weight did you throw? I said, a 3/16. He said, no, you didn't. I said, sure, I was throwing a 3/16 on a tube. He said, I know you was on a tube, but he said, you had to have a heavier weight. He said, to blow out there. And I said, no, sir. I said, I was not. And after about the fourth time he called me a liar, I said, sir, I have no reason to lie to you. I'll probably never be back down there. I said, you call me a liar one more time. I said, I'm gonna hang up on you. I said, I'm trying to explain to you what I was doing. And he made some other kind of comment. I said, it's nice to talk to you, and I hung up. But what I was trying to tell him was that when you're fishing current, there's veins or lines or creases or there's spots in the current where there is no current. That's the reason fish sit in them spots. They ain't gonna fight that current all day long. They may swim in the current to get something, but they ain't gonna sit there and fight it all day long. They're either in front of a rock or behind a rock or somewhere where there's a crease. And that's what you gotta do when you're fishing hard current. You gotta find that crease and you gotta get at the bottom. I went back and watched it a few times, and what I was doing was spinning reel. I was casting in the creases and holding my line up and trying to get my bait to fall. And I didn't fall every time. You know, I'd get probably 3 out of 5 casts that hit exactly where I wanted them to fall down. And what I would do is just ease it to where it would catch a piece of concrete. When it caught a piece of concrete, I sat there and held it. All right? If I didn't get bit, I just barely crawled it over the concrete till it hit another piece of concrete. And I just sat there and hold it, and it'd go tick. And when it'd go tick, I couldn't set the hook, because what it was, they'd poured big busted up concrete in front of this power plant to keep from washing the bank out. And it was a hole on the other side of it, the concrete between me and where the fish was. But it had an opening out into the river. The river's 40 foot deep, and there ain't nothing out there. So there was a school of fish there. When they would grab the crawdad, they'd swim out in the river. So what I would do, it'd go thoink, I'd turn my trolling motor to the right, and let off the trolling motor, and they would swim out into the river. And when I turned my trolling motor right, that current would just turn my boat that way. And when I'd get out the river, I'd set the hook. I mean, every fish I caught, I'd go down river a mile, fire back the motor, and go back up. But I was using I even caught some of them using an 8 ounce, because there was a little eddy up on the side that if I used the 3/16 net, I'd get hung up and I wouldn't get my bait back. But that's where the shad would. The shad would stay up, and they would come up, they'd form up in this little eddy on the side. And every once in a while you'd see them flash, and then you'd go over there and catch one. But I couldn't throw the 3/16, so I throw the 8 over there. I mean, I was going to explain that to the guy, but he just wouldn't. He just gave me a liar. I couldn't. Some people you just can't help, you know.
Too big, stupid, huh?
Color matter in spring, fall, and summer to you?
No, as long as it's green country.
Long as spring, fall. The weight matters in spring, fall, and summer? The weight that you're using?
I really can't tell you what makes the weight difference, but I guided on White River at Noblesville. All right? Average depth is 2.5 foot deep. There was days that they would eat a 3/16 and wouldn't hardly eat an 8. There was days they would eat an 8 and wouldn't hardly eat a 3/16. Now, I don't know whether that was the fall of it or the way it hung on the bottom part of it. Because all we did is, I mean, most of the time on the river, it was, you didn't move it a foot, you got bit, you know. But there was definitely times that they would eat 8 better than they would a 3/16 and 3/16 at 8. It was always the same tooth. I mean, it's not always been the same tooth, because I've used like 2 or 3 different companies in the tube, because they changed the plastic. I mean, the reason almost with the secret lures is because when I give them the stupid tube name, I told them if they would make them to mine and Matt's specifications. Matt always wanted a little bit smaller tube than I did, and so we kind of settled in the middle of 3.7 inches. I mean, I use some 4s. I use a big dummy tube. I use some Snap Daddy tubes. There's times they want a bigger bait, but when it gets tough, and that's usually on the weekend when everybody's been beating them dead, the 3.7 or 3.5 or somewhere down small works the best.
And then why do you throw the Texas rig? Is there a reason for that on the tube?
Mainly if I'm fishing weeds. The stupid tube catches weeds, and I don't like to pull weeds. Like I tell my partner, if I'm gonna pull weeds, I'll stay home. I got weeds to pull the house. And I just hate, getting flying home and pulling weeds off every cat. I mean, there's times that they want that too, to hang on stuff. And, it works and you catch fish with it, but it's a pain in the butt. So if I'm fishing weeds or fishing real heavy wool boosters and stuff like at Monroe, I'll go to the Texas rig. But probably 90% of the time I'm throwing a stupid tube.
How many tournaments do you fish in a year now, Terry?
I have no idea. Many as I can.
Many as you can.
I don't really want to know the number. I'm not a great number person and keeping track of stuff. I'm very unorganized.
It's probably better for you.
It works, My dad had a place for everything in place. My mom was just a mess, and I didn't get none of my dad's habits there. You can look at my boat or look at my equipment. That's the reason I fish a stupid tube. It's simple. They don't know we're down there. I mean, they know we're down there because we're making a bunch of noise and beating around and banging around. But they really don't, they're not down there thinking, them boys is out here trying to trick us again. All they want to do is eat, man. Give them something to eat. Don't take it away from them. I see most people take it away from them. Now let's face it, Kevin Van Dam and Jacob Wheeler's two top money weight makers, and they fish fast all the time. If they're not fishing Indiana. Hey, Jacob come for one time last year. Guess who beat him?
You probably watched a lot of the BPT this week, the Major League Fishing this week.
Yes.
What's your thoughts on the forward-facing sonar?
What's my thoughts on it? Pretty awesome.
It's really, now that it's out there and everybody has seen what it can do, that's good. It's going to be the talk of the town now. Everybody's going to talk about it. I talked to Brandon McDonald, and he absolutely hates it. He hopes they ban it. So to you, does it kind of take away from the sport of fishing?
No, it's just it's another way of doing it. I mean, also you've seen Jacob Wheeler looking at him too, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
He didn't catch him, did he?
No.
He finished third or fourth.
Still got to catch the fish.
Yeah, you still got to make them eat.
Yeah.
And for them two boys back there, it's awesome. For some of us here, it's another game that I didn't grow up with one of these.
Right.
I cannot even set it up. Brody sets it up. One of my other grandkids sets it up, and when I have a problem, I call him and say, "Hey, I can't shut it off. I can't turn it on." I have a problem with mine. I call Brody, and he works me through it. And I've been sitting there playing with it for an hour, and he said, "Well, push this button, push that button," and it works. But it's a different generation, and yeah, I'm gonna play with one of them. I was back there this morning talking to Jason. I talked to Brody. What do I need to? I'm a homebird guy, and the reason I'm a homebird guy is because I've had that. Brody told me last year, or 3 years ago, when I bought my last Ranger, to put both Lowrance and Hummingbird. He's big on the Lowrance. They both do better things. So I bought a Lowrance and a Hummingbird, Lowrance and a Hummingbird, and double mounts, put them on the boat. And I found myself out there, guys, running around and trying to turn it on and turn this one on. Okay, now do this with the Hummingbird, now this is the Lowrance. I think I'll turn it on. So I run it for about 6 months, and my buddy's a Lowrance guy, and I say, "Hey, I got 2 new Lowrances. You want them?" I've been on the state team a couple of times, so I usually get a state team deal, so I get a pretty good deal on my stuff, so I can usually, sell it and at least get my money back. So that's what I've done. So I've got, Ranger sitting out there with dual mounts with a single 12 Hummingbird on it, and I use the map on it and the depth finder to run with, hardly for anything else. But yeah, shoot, not only that, that every term, the bass tournament today, that's what they're doing. They're looking at it. When you sit and you're in this room and the only trash pile is that table back there, and we're sitting there going, "Oh, I just caught a fish. A lot of times we didn't feel that brush pile, we just think we ran into one, so we, oh, I caught a fish. Well, now it's like, there's a brush pile. Oh, there's 3 fish on that brush pile. Let me catch that one in the middle. He looks like a sucker. We'll catch him. Huh? Well, there was 2 guys. They started out and tried to get it. Let me catch that other one. You know. Or you pull up and say, look, there's one, but he's a big one. Let me catch this one with this trash pile. Or wow, look at all of them out here. You know, and I throw a tube in there and I drag it through them. And I pick up spinner bait and it comes through and they don't nothing. Now I pick up a jerk bait and I bring it off top of them, all of them come up to look at it. I'm gonna keep throwing that jerk bait at it.
Right.
I mean it's sight fishing,
It's gonna change the game.
but I don't know how many of you guys have looked at one of them. I played with one for 3 days in Florida 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I don't know what was set up right. I called Brody, we played with it, you know. Played with it for 2 days, found out it had the transducer backwards. Anyway.
Does the pole matter, the length and the medium, just the medium heavy 7.3 is what you always use on it too, or
For the most part.
for the most part?
Well, in the bait caster, I use a 2-power. I mean, spin reel, I use a 2-power. In bait caster, I use a 3-power on my tubes. I use a 4-power on a jig. But I use a 7.5 foot long rod, so I think it's 7.5. I use 7.4, 7.5 bait caster, 7.5 foot spinning rod. But I also use an 803, which is what, 6'8", when I'm fishing a lot of bushes or stuff that I'm wanting to get under. Because with a longer rod, it's hard to get your bait to get down and skip with it. To me, it's easier to skip with a 6.5 or 6'8" foot rod. So I fish the smaller tube on an basically an 803 NRX 803. One of the big things with the tube that the reason I think the tube works so well is, and I found a lot of this guiding. I don't know if any of you guys have watched a fish eat in an aquarium where they got rocks in it or any kind of gravel or pre-gravel. They suck it in, and the next thing they do is they blow out. But you never see them blow out any food. The only thing you blow out is rocks. They don't blow the food out. They don't blow something that's soft out. They got crushers in the back of their throat. Them crushers hangs on all that stuff that's soft. They blow all the hard stuff out. That's the reason a lot of good fishermen have learned to fish with a jig, because with a jig, you better be quick and you better set it quick, because I think they blow a jig out quicker than they do anything else because it's all hard. There's hardly anything for them to hang on to except for your trailer, and it may catch them back to the throat. But when they start, and I've told this before, if you ain't done this, the next time you catch a fish, follow my instructions here to a T, or if you're going to be mad at me. Next bass you catch, take your finger, open his mouth, and stick your finger down his throat and choke him. But he's going to grab your finger and start crushing it. Don't jerk it out, because you'll take the skin off of it. Wiggle it and you'll let go of it. But them crushers, when they grab hold of it, you'll feel it. He's pulling that bait in. But like the first thing he does, when he grabs it, the second thing he does is blow the rocks out. Because it's hard for him to suck anything off the bottom without sucking rocks in. So it's just 90% of the time that's a bite unless they're swimming and chasing it. Crankbaits is different. But with the tube, I think that's the reason it works, because they're not filling anything hard. Everything they're crushing, that's the reason they hang on to it forever. I mean, how many of you guys have practiced with the tube and say, oh man, we'll catch them tomorrow, because they just swim around with it, and you lead them to the boat with it. They don't do it on tournament day because you put too much pressure on it. You know, it's like, hey, I just grabbed me a crawdad, but darn, he's mean. He just keeps pulling me and pulling me and pulling me. I'm gonna open my mouth and let go. That's, if I see anybody do wrong, that's what they do, is they put too much pressure. It's always the first movement here is feel. Feel, then pull, or feel, then hop.
I'd say I've probably missed a lot of fish by what you were saying, pulling them maybe too, cranking instead of just being patient and feeling. I learned from Brett years ago. I got to fish a day with him with the jig. I was never a line watcher. I probably missed hundreds of baits because I was not a line watcher. And you got to watch your line. You may not feel the bite, but you can see the line. And I probably missed a ton off the tube the same way.
You know, I really learned a lot when I was guiding because, I was, most people want me to go ahead and fish, so I'd fish, and I'd usually fish out away from the bank and point for them places to fish, but I was always watching the line. I'd see the line jump, and I'd look back at it, and it was still just, I said, "You get bit?" "No, I didn't get bit." I said, "The reel." And the line's going either downstream or upstream. I said, "Sure." "Oh, there's one on there. We'll just grab it." No one's had it. I grabbed my little tool out, stuck it down the throat.
You use any sand?
No. I was really big on, one time when I was jig fishing, I used a lot of, I used to have a guy pour my jig trailers, and I had him put that scent oil in it when he molded them. It would stay in it a lot longer, but with the tube, I won't fish a tube without salt in it. And this is the first time I've seen this. Anybody watched any of Randy Blockett stuff? He's on a big thing, but I've always done this with the tube. A lot of other salt places I haven't done, but I hate to put on a new tube. Just absolutely, I hate to use a new tube. I even, at one time, I found some dead fish and took fish, their teeth, their lips, and tried working my tube with it because that's the only thing that makes them look the way they look after fish. Seems like a tube to me is a whole lot better after I caught 2 or 3 fish on it. And that's about kind of head toss to the plastic. Anyway, what I do when I first take a tube out of the package, I just crush it up a little bit. But I actually did it. I found some old bluegill or something on the river, took their teeth and put it in the boat, and I just, crush it. I tried it with sandpaper and different things, but it just don't get that. But 2 things. One, you guys, some of these older guys like me, soak your feet in salt water. What's your foot feel like when you pull it out? All slimy and a little slick, right? The salt makes it slick. I think it's tube the same thing. You use a little salt on it or fish guts on it. It gets wet, it's slick and slimy, and that's what they're used to feeling. But anyway, I was talking about Randy Blockett. It's what he was throwing a sinker or something. He took it and just wallered it. It changes colors too. It goes from a shiny color to a faded color. But no, I don't use any scent. Main reason because that garlic kind of makes me about half sick and hungry for pizza or something. I do use some dye. I like the dye. I think sometimes it helps. But like I say, the only time I do that kind of stuff is when it's tough fishing. So I don't really know what makes a difference, but I just finally come across the fish.
You got some history on Schaefer. That's one of our lakes on our schedule. One of the most hated lakes this year. Our schedule's pretty solid up until like Schaefer, and it's I think in June or July.
You don't know anything about Schaefer, it's Wabash.
It's So middle of June, you got any experience to help these guys out find some fish and?
Docs.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. We also have St. Clair too. If you'd rather talk about that one too.
Go up to. Go as far as you can with the boat and start waiting. You leave the boat, start waiting, because them smallmouth are gone. So they're up that river. Or wait till October when they come back down.
Right.
Oh, there's still a few out in the lake.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a deep water fisherman, but I have to say there's some monsters out there deep that you could probably take a live scope or something like that and go out there and find them. Like Bill Smith. You guys know who Bill Smith is. He caught a bunch of fish this year in a row. He says he hopes everybody gets that live scoop and goes out in the middle of the lake and starts fishing. Gives him more room on the bank. So that's the good part of the live. Yeah. It's like everybody says, that live scope stuff a game changer. If you got that, I'll go up there and start looking for some of them deep fish. But other than the fall of the year, I would go up there and throw a tube or some kind of small worm around the docks. It's always good cover up there, and a little big old crawdad crankbait. That's probably one of the favorite baits. If you go up there, all them locals is throwing that little crawdad crankbait. This is another part of my story. When I qualified for the Bassmaster Classic, my first fish in the Nationals come off that little crawdad, big old You know what I'm talking about, it's a little bitty fella. But John Raines, which is Sheriff Schaefer,
Okay.
he had been down in the fishing tournament. He told me a place to fish. He said, hey, pull that crawdad colored Big O, and my first fish was a 4-pounder. And all the rest of my fish come on stupid too, you know, for the next 3 days. But,
You can almost get your glass boat to Blasco County,
I'm sorry, I didn't.
up the Tippecanoe River at Schaefer. You can almost get your glass boat all the way to Blasco County.
I've been to Buffalo, I don't know what county, man, but I've been up past Buffalo.
With Greg Zellers and all that. With Greg Zellers and, you know.
Oh, yeah, I'd like to get up into there, that's where they're at.
Yeah.
That's how I know they're up there.
Yeah, I know.
I went to his house one day and I was like, yeah, there's where they're at.
Monroe's another one. I've read some articles from like 25, 30 years ago, and Monroe was really good. And you was actually in some of the articles of catching some of those big bags, 25-pound bags back in the day. Is Monroe?
That part back in the day, I used to cut their heads off. I don't have any pictures like that.
I don't know.
Big bass on the road, they cut their heads off.
Is-
I'm
is-
talking back in the 60s, those 70s.
Brian,
Well, the 64s.
I don't remember the year this was, but it's been some time ago. But there were some really good bags weighed in, and
Yeah,
it seems
I
like it's coming back. Do you think
A
so?
couple 30-pound bags up there.
Really? Is it due to the grass back in the day? And they
No, it was, everything I fished at, there was wood,
really?
yeah, all wood.
Do you feel?
Wood-related stuff, stones.
Do you feel it's making a comeback?
Well, definitely make a comeback. I mean, last year was awesome. I mean, I didn't get fishing this last year. I had a couple turns long, done pretty decent.
Right.
You know, the biggest problem we've had with Monroe is they can't get a good spawn because of water fluctuation. That's,
Every year.
I mean, Geist is in Indiana, we have got plenty of fish up there. They don't fluctuate. They got a chance to spawn.
Yeah.
Yeah, whether it's got grass or don't have grass, if they get to spawn. They're gonna find cover, and if they, but if you don't have babies, you can't multiply. Schaefer, what, at Monroe? When's your tournament at Monroe?
May.
Ooh, that could be crazy. That's spawn.
Yep. Exactly.
Blue Eye Grove, there's 2.
Mm-hmm.
If you're getting the bushes, I won a state finals, state finals down there one year. I caught 1 fish the first day, it was a 2-day tournament. I caught 1 fish the first day, but I figured something out at the end of the day, and I caught that 1 fish. And it just was falling all over earlier. Probably gonna be flooding in May.
Mm-hmm.
All right, it's gonna be up in the bushes, and I either throw the Texas rig 2, or probably throw a Texas rig crawl. But when they get it in bushes, and it's in May, they're not feeding, all right? They're spawning. So they're not feeding, but they are very territorial. So when you pitch in a boost that time of the year, you don't pitch in there and pop it and shake it. You do what I was talking about a few minutes ago. The first thing you do is feel. And if you feel like you're hung on a limb, don't shake it off. Hold it still. Let's see it go. You just put a little bit of pressure on him, he'll go like that. When he goes like that, you give it back to him, because you just tried to get it out of his mouth. So now you give it back to him, and then when he pulls it down, you give him one of these numbers. But that ain't gonna spin reel. That's 20, 25 pound fish.
Yeah.
But that is a big bite made down there. It's in any kind of bushes. You got to right in the middle of it, and you drop it to the bottom, you pick it up, you drop it to the bottom, you pick it up. You may do it 3 or 4 times. And when you pull it, and it may be the first time, but if you pull up, don't shake it, don't pull it up, feel it up. I think I'm talking. Feel it up. Feel it up. That's what I say. That's one of the, we spend high dollar for a rod that's got a lot of sensitivity. We pop it, we're moving it this way. The reason I use a light rod and a light reel is trying to get everything as light as I can. I don't hardly ever grip it. I'm just trying to be delicate and hold on to it, because I'm trying to feel. They talk about B and G. You want to feel what that thing's doing. So when you pull it up, if it's 9 times out of 10, it's going to be on the limb, but the limb ain't going to move. So you hold it on the limb, and it don't move. You pull it over the limb and drop it back in. I mean, when I'm fishing anytime I'm fishing with any kind of cover, I'm trying to figure out what it is. If I can't see it, if I know it's a boost, I know it's a boost, and it's, you know, falling a little limb, it's coming up the limb. But if it's just pitched out there and it's a stump, I wanna know if there's rocks around the stumps or it's just stump. I can't figure it out, but I'm trying to.
Right.
And when you're doing that, what I tell a lot of people I take to Detroit and St. Clair and fish is with a tube, I tell them to count rocks. Drag it and count rocks.
Yeah.
If you're counting rocks, you're doing what you're supposed to do. There's a rock, there's another rock, there ain't no rocks no more. If there ain't no rocks no more, reel it in, because they're gonna be in that cover. If there's weeds, there's no more weeds, drag it 3 feet, if they ain't the edges and weeds, they're not there, reel it in and make another cast. And if you're not feeling anything, keep dragging, till you hit something. When you hit something, slow down. That's what the crawdad's gonna do. He's gonna get to that cover and he's gonna slow down and feed.
You a line filler? You filling your line to figure out what's down there? Are you filling your line or are you using the rod? The whole rod?
My hand is right here. Because if I'm feeling my line, I gotta make another adjustment to do something.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm not a big line, I mean, I wash my line, but I try to do everything by feel. Can't see very good, I can't hear, you know, so I try to do by feel. And it's about gone too.
I'm in that class.
I can't feel it anymore. Over here.
You can talk as much as you want, or you got.
You might got any other questions? St. Clair, who's it?
It's June of July, yeah, mid-July. So may hit some more spawners.
Spawners should be gone. Has anybody been up there and spawned? That is crazy stupid. I went last year for the first time. Oh my gosh, I gotta go back.
We got Todd and Tom. They're not here now, but they fish the BFLs up there, and they're pretty certain we may catch the tail end, but of smallies.
Yeah, I'd say. I mean, you might find one or two.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I fish current. When I go over, I fish current. I don't fish on the lake. There's a lot of big fish on the lake.
Yeah.
You know, if you see a bunch of boats, go fish there, because out on the lake up there, they're not a wolf pack of 5 or 6. It's a wolf pack of 500. I mean, let's face it, they're big school fish.
You fish much up the St. Clair River then?
I fished the BFLs up there for the last 4 or 5 years. I didn't do it before that. And the cash and chip was pretty much. I went up there the first time I fished up there. Matt, my nephew, he was fishing the BFL Rocky Point. I went up there for the first time, and I'm coming back home, and he calls me, and he's laughing as soon as I answer the phone. I said, "What's the matter with you?" He said, "I just pulled you up on FLW." He said, "You had your best finish ever in a BFL and never cashed a check." I had almost 18 pounds and didn't catch a check. And I said, "I suppose you got a check." He said, "Yep, I had 3 catch a check." That's the reason I'm up there though. I fish for I go up there for 2 days of practice and 1 day of tournament at least. And I have a ball, you know, and I done figured out a long time ago that Kevin and Jacob's the only one making any money. So the best part of this thing is try to have a good time. When you're not having fun doing it, go do something else. Go play with the kids, play with the wife, play with something. But yeah, if you're not having a good time doing this, there's no money in it. Trust me, there's no money in it. Trust me. You know, Jason's the one that's making the money. So, and I don't know how, you know, I've been a ranger for 18 years. I've got 18 new rangers, and I got a new Phoenix coming next week. And it wasn't because Ranger dying. My Ranger deal was just almost as good. They made some changes, but it's almost as good as it's always been. And I didn't do it because Phoenix is better than Ranger. Ranger's better than Phoenix. I've done it because there's the 3 people out in the back room that does their service and does their stuff. Jimmy, Rick Jones. I've had dealings with Rick Jones for the last 20 years, and Jason and Jimmy. I've dealt with them. I've done it because of the clientele they got here, and it's a one-stop shop. I don't have to go to the outdoors and get my tackle and come here to get my boat worked on. I mean, they've taken care of my troll motor needs and depth finder needs anyway. So that's the reason I'm just
doing this restoration on the Ranger, and I am entirely disappointed in Ranger. Their parts availability and their get back to you-ness is horrible.
Yeah.
I sent an email because they wouldn't answer the phone, and it took over 3 weeks, just under 4 weeks, to get a reply that the part's no longer available, blah, blah, blah. And, I thought, man, that's pathetic. It takes almost 4 weeks to get a reply I was asking about a front valve console, a lid.
If you get to talk to someone down there in the parts, get their name and get their number or their extension number, okay? Because otherwise, you don't get to talk to the people that's doing the work. It's kind of like coming in here and stopping up and talking to one of the girls. These girls do a great job, but they're not fishermen. They don't know what an Ultrex is. They don't know that, it takes 36 volts or anything else. And you can talk to them, they're blue in the face, but they're here to get their $15 an hour or whatever the wage is. You need to find you a contact down there and.
It's hard when they won't answer the phone.
If you,
I know, if you ever get one, that's what you gotta do.
If you go on Facebook to the Ranger boat owner page on Facebook and put out that you're gonna need some stuff, there's plenty of guys that give you contact names and numbers, your private message, that'll connect you directly to
It's
them.
just like anything else you do, you gotta have a guy. If you got the right guy, they'll get you what you want. The bad part, they changed a lot of guys, and that's, I mean, bottom line, the reason I'm not with Rangers is because Mike McDonald. Rangers is a big company. They don't, they've got Terry McWilliams' name. I've been with them since 1998. And some of them know who Terry McWilliams is. Most of them are not there anymore because all the office help went to Brandon, Missouri, where the
Springfield.
Branson?
Brandon. That's where their main office is. So if they didn't want to move there, they went and found a job somewhere else in Texas or whatever. But Mike McDonald's the reason I got the deals I got over here. To put me in a Ranger in 1990. And
Is he not there no more? Or?
no, his contract was up, and his new contract said he had to deal with Triton, Nitro, and Ranger. And Mike's didn't want to do that, and so he lost his job.
And he said they wanted him to travel a lot more.
Yeah, you're covering,
Yeah,
He
he
was
traveled
coming-
enough as
he
a
was
bus.
coming- yeah, he was
They
coming
wanted
like
him
he
to
was
travel more.
I don't know how much any of you dealt with Mike McDonald, but
Class
he
act.
was an awesome guy.
He was always there at Ted's too, every time Ted had a thing.
Not only that, Mike was one heck of a fisherman back in the late 80s, early 90s. When I got started in this, he was pretty up. I know he beat me by 1 ounce of big bass at the Tote in 1989. Again in a row. Yeah. He gave up a lot to go to do what he done, I think. But everybody stupid crazy about fishing. But some of us are. It's an addiction. It's an addiction. I love it.
We got enough time for a couple more questions. Bringing up St. Clair, are you into the drop shot, the flat nose?
A what shot?
Exactly.
He drove a tube and say,
Can you put a tube on that job?
Yeah, can you put a tube on it?
Them fish up, the fish you want to catch up there, it don't matter what you drop on them. If you find them, they weed.
Gotcha.
Right? Now, if you get in one of them creeks where there's a lot of fish at, it's still the same way. I just,
You still stick with the tube?
yeah, I throw 3 baits up there. I throw a tube, big tube or little tube, and I just start throwing the little tube or the big tube a couple years ago when it was stoked some Snack Daddies. I mean, they made the big dummy and copied off the size of Snack Daddy. It's got a thinner wall and more open in the center, so you get a little better hookup on it. I think. But I use a big tube, a little tube. I use a light green pumpkin purple in a big tube, and a straight green pumpkin in a little tube. I don't know why. I don't catch as many fish on the green pumpkin big tube. I think that is because I'm swimming it more, and I think the light green pumpkin purple looks more like a perch. That's my reasoning for it. Probably not the truth, but anyway, that's my
Yeah.
The other thing I throw is I used to throw a spook. I can't throw a spook anymore because of the shoulder, so I throw a water pulse. I'd rather throw a spook. I have started throwing the shower blow because you can work a shower blow with less shoulder. So I throw a big shower blow or a big spook and a big crankbait.
Gotcha.
In the fall of the year, they like a crankbait. I mean, they probably like a crankbait all the time, but I don't want to fish a crankbait. I fish it because I think I do better with it, because I've done this since I was 12 years old. I'm 72, so that's 60 years. So they're gone. there ain't nothing left.
You throw an open hook then up St. Clair
No.
versus the stupid tube?
No, go stupid too. Why make it complicated? I mean, I'm catching them on stupid too very well. So
I didn't know, you know what I mean?
I actually can't hook them on an open hook. I would miss more fish with an open. I tried it. I'll miss more fish with an open hook. I don't know, and it's stupid. I don't know why it's that way.
It's like the stupid tube up around here, Tennessee, you know, like I fish, I tend to shy away from the tube. But at St. Clair, like Zellers is the big dude, you know, open hook, heavy weight, power fishing, and it is a big dude.
Here's my problem with an open hook. Same reason it was at Mississippi River. When I feel like I'm gonna get bit up there, I start feeling the crunchy stuff. Right? When you start feeling crunchy stuff, I get a little excited. All right? Because that's usually where the crawdads are. A lot of times that crunchy stuff is mussels, and shells. If you got an open hook, you hang up in it. So what do you do when you hang up? You either go get it, or you break it off, or you pull a bunch of mussels, stir up everything. If I drag the stupid tube up there, 9 times out of 10 I'm not going to get hung up. I'm going to get caught on it, and what do? Just put a little pressure on it, it pops. What's a crawdad do when he swims? He pops. I mean, that's another thing to do up there with a tube in St. Clair or East Ray River, is to pop. There's times that they want that thing just pop. Heavyweight, just erratic.
Crack it.
Crack it, yeah, crack that tube.
Any more questions, guys?
Thank you.
Stick to the board. I've been home for a good while. Yeah. They're hanging on that wall.
Yeah.